Welcome to Garden of Lights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Cooperative Extension, partnership with the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension. Today we're going to talk about squash, and I'm going to talk about winter squash. And to get even nitty to it, it's the butternut squash. And then you're also going to hear from Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent. He's going to try to tell you how to get that fig tree ready by pruning it. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden of Lights.
Okay, today we're back up here with our fig bush. If you recall, a couple of shows back we talked about our figs, and we were having difficulty then getting the figs picked. We had to get a step ladder up here to try to get to them because our bush is a little bit overgrown. So today we're going to talk about how to prune the fig. I've got Eric Smith here with me. He is the small fruit specialist from the University of Georgia. He's stationed out of Tifton. He came up today to give us a little advice on pruning this fig back. So I'm gonna let Eric tell us a little bit about this. It's kind of growing out in the parking lot here, so we got to get that trimmed back, and we just generally want to get it back under control so that next year when we want to talk about figs, we'll be able to walk around it and pick them. So, Eric, I'm going to just let you tell us a little bit about pruning figs.
Well, thank you, Frank. I appreciate you having me up today. When we are growing figs in our backyards, we really don't want the plant to eat up a lot of space in there, and we want to be able to pick the fruit off of it. And if you're in South Georgia, you can probably grow a fig as a tree and get some shade out of it. But the further north you go, you want to grow it in a bush configuration because it has a tendency to be sensitive to cold and freezing. And these bushes many years ago were pruned appropriately for a bush configuration, but have not been pruned in a number of years and have grown to a point at which they've grown upwards of 15 to 20 feet high up there. And that makes it very difficult to get the fruit off of there. And so today we're going to use some tools that are appropriate for pruning, and we're going to show some pruning practices and techniques and things that you need to do to prune these so that you can have fruit that is accessible in a manner what we call a pedestrian orchard, so you can walk right up to the tree and pick the fruit right off of it. So the first thing we're going to do is we have some tools that we're going to use. There's the traditional using the bow saw and cutting it by hand and sweating a bit, and then coming in and having pruners to cut small cuts in there. These are little bypass pruners here, and then these pole pruners are larger bypass pruners here for larger cuts. And then once you get into a position where the wood is so large that it becomes very difficult to manage this, we've got a tool right here that all we have to do is just grab the branch, and it cuts it with a bit of a chainsaw blade. And then for the larger cuts, if we're going to take some very deep cuts on there, we've got a chainsaw. And in all cases, when we're out here working, we should be thinking about safety. So the first thing if you're going to operate a chainsaw, have yourself some chaps, so you don't cut big holes into your legs if you make a swing and cut on there and it drops on you, or if the chain breaks off, it has something to bounce off of instead of cutting into you. Chainsaws are loud. We always have some hearing protection to keep our ears safe, and then definitely want to keep our eyes safe by having some eye protection. Then also, when you realize that a chainsaw is a two-stroke motor, so you're going to have two-cycle gasoline engine to go inside there, and you also should have your bar oil inside there so that you can keep that chain liquid, the oil on there, so that it can keep the chain sharp over time.
It's also important if you're going to use a chainsaw, if you've got a chainsaw, chainsaws are supposed to make work easy, and so your chainsaw needs to be serviced. It needs to start when you pull the rope. It needs to be sharp so that it's bringing out nice chunks of wood. If you got a chainsaw that's putting out sawdust, and you're having to do a lot of work to get things cut, you need to work on your chainsaw, because chainsaws are to make life easier, not make you have to work hard trying to use your chainsaw. And I see a lot of folks in the homeowner situation that have got chainsaws, never been sharpened, never done anything, and it's like, you know, you might as well be using a pocket knife or something trying to cut some of these branches off. So keep your stuff serviced.
And then one last thing, when we're in here working, we're going to be wearing our gloves all the time and also our eye protection all the time. If you look inside the fig, there's lots of little branches that are sticking out, and the potential to stick yourself in the eye is pretty high. So we really suggest that you wear some safety protection so that you keep yourself in top physical shape. Okay, so we're going to go in and we're going to make some cuts.
Explain to us a little bit, Eric, about the approach that you want to use here. Let me let you get over here next to the tree and just tell us what you see here.
So if you can look into the tree, or the bush actually configuration, this fig has been trained as a bush. So you can see that there's a number of leaders that are coming out directly from the ground, and it is meant to have an open and a large canopy that comes out. And this is what they call a bush configuration. If it was going to be in a tree, you would also have a single trunk with branches that are coming off. But this one is being grown as a bush. When we take a look at this, there is a lot of wood that is sticking out far and away from the center of this. So that makes it very difficult for light to get down into the center of the plant. And it's important to get light into the center of the plant because that's where rejuvenation shoots will come out. And on those rejuvenation shoots is where you're going to have fruit borne. And so it's very important to get that light in the center and have that bushiness in a compact form. Because this one has gotten so out of hand, we're going to come in here and severely prune this to where we make it a pedestrian size. So the average cut is probably going to be at about a 5-foot height on some of the main leaders, and then even lower. As you can see down in the bottom of this, some of the shoots have come out and touched onto the ground and have been covered by the ground. And from there, we have other plantlets that are coming up, and that's called layering. And so the bush is actually creating more bushes as you look inside the canopy. But because it's in shade all summer long, when the leaf canopy is on here, that's very weak wood and it's not very productive wood. So what we want to try to do is get a balance in this plant so that we can have high quality, easy to pick fruit, and you're not competing with all the birds and everything. The other reason we want to draw this back down into size is because it can get extremely cold up here to a point at which it can cause freeze damage on the plant. If you have a plant that you can come out and put a tarp over the top of it and maybe put an incandescent light bulb underneath there to keep it warm, you can save a lot of that wood on that plant during real cold times. And we have just gone through a week where we had very low temperatures and even snow, which is somewhat rare for Georgia, and especially in South Georgia where I hail from. Down in Tifton we had some snow. Okay, so we're going to come in here and do some pruning cuts.
All right, well, why don't we just get ready here and we'll just go to work, and if we see something we need to stop and talk about, we can do that too.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the bow saw here, and what I want to show you is, if you can see in here, how the architecture of these branches are coming out here. A lot of people, when they make a cut on a branch, sometimes they leave these large pieces out here. Well, what's going to happen is that piece of wood is just going to die, and that's an excellent place for insects to move in and start making galleries and homes inside there. It's also an excellent place for disease to come in. So if you can get these cut as close to where the branch is coming out of here, there is a natural process at which the fig itself will heal itself, and it'll send out sap and it will save its wood, and then that will be an excellent point at which the cut itself isn't endangering the plant and creating more problems for them. So I'll give you a look with this at first. And so that's the angle at which we want that cut. We want a nice flush surface, very close back up to where the branch came apart. Then when we have smaller branches like this, and a lot of times you find that these are dead, at any time pruning out dead wood is very important, because that's a potential site for diseases to set off into the plant themselves. You want to prune that off?
We'll probably just take that one off with this. And you can see a bush this big, if you're going to do all the pruning with your bow saw, you'll be in pretty good shape when you get through. So we've got some other tools here that we'll use as we go along and get this thing shaped up. I'll let you just point out to us what you want to do next, Eric, and we'll just prune it back.
Okay, so this little tool right here, this Black & Decker, is a really nice tool to get larger cuts. So I don't know if you can see into here where I'm at, but there's a number of branches that are in here in which all of these are creating quite a tight canopy, and there's no light coming in here. You can find some smaller branches that have been trying to come on, but some of these are dead and rotting, and that means that there's just not enough strength in those branches to come back into this. So what we'll do here, in order to try to bring in some light in the bottom, is we'll start to pull off some of these larger branches. Now this does two things for us. It helps us get into the canopy now. We don't have a lot of material in our way, and now we're going to just go ahead and we're going to clean up this plant. And so the next thing you probably see is a very shortened version of what's sitting right here right now.
We're back here with our reduced size fig bush. I didn't mean to make Eric work so hard. You know, we had to take his jacket off so he could finish up. Tell us a little bit about what's going on here. Now, we left a few branches on here, so we'll put out some early leaves and just
yeah, Frank. So my thought is these are some very old limbs in here, and over the next few years, you're going to have to start taking each one of these out. And you'll see some of these younger shoots that are coming up in here from last year. Now those are going to become very productive and they're going to be very vigorous this next year. But you still need to put some shoots on here and get some leaves onto the plant. Leaves can help conduct water through the plant. And so I left a few branches that had some leaves on there so that those leaves can come out early in the spring and start conducting water through here, and that'll help the vigor of the plant. For the most part, we took out all the dead and damaged wood. We found the older branches and took them down. We tried to bring this thing down to where at least eyeball height on me, which is probably about 5'8". And what we wanted to do in here is make it so that I can start pulling out these larger pieces of wood with new renewal shoots every year. So figure over the next 4 years, you'll be taking one of these out and you'll be cultivating and working with these. Prune the tops and keep it to height. Don't let it just start growing straight up into the air like it did before, and keep it into a condensed bush. And this way you can have figs that are at hand level, and you can also tarp it in cold weather.
Okay, and I think what we're going to do now is we're going to go back inside and see what Susan is fixing.